crisis. Welcome aboard to the Fourth Trader Podcast with your host, Gates Adams.
What's up, traders? Welcome back to the Forged Trader Podcast, where successful traders aren't born, they are forged. I'm your host, Gates Adams, and today I got a little bit of an update from this past week. So if you've been watching and following along, you know I've been on a bit of a roll. I managed to get not only my first payout, I got my second payout on my primary account. I requested my third payout on my primary account, but was denied because I didn't have 5 days over $50 in profit. I had to go back and really look at the numbers because I would have sworn I had that nailed down. But upon a little further review, it turns out I did not. So lesson learned on that one. But I also received my first payout on 2 additional accounts. And earlier in the week, I hit an absolute high. The high was that out of my $950,000 Apex Trader Funding accounts, all of them were above and beyond payout threshold. This happened on Monday. On Tuesday, I had a devastating day and went down about $3,000 per account. So if you're doing the math, that's almost $30,000 in profits lost. And it didn't blow the accounts. Of course, I had about $5,000 worth of buffer minimum. Obviously, a few of the accounts were already over and had a little bit more love in them. But the point is that I went through and I just had a rough start to the day, and I just that old feeling overtook me, and I just couldn't stop. I kept pushing for more, trying to recoup and regain and just come out of the hole. And as I'm doing this, I started to realize that on this road, on this path to getting these first payouts, to getting these accounts over threshold, this wasn't the first time that I'd done this on my winning streak. In fact, some of my biggest days winning started off as losing days that I should have walked away from. And you've heard me talk about the concept of rewarding bad behavior, or being rewarded, I guess, for bad behavior. And this was the perfect example of this. I had multiple days where I had continued to do things that I knew I shouldn't do, and I was being rewarded for that. And of course, what does that do? That encourages you to continue to do it over and over and over again. And this goes back to the whole DCA rule that was one point a problem with Apex, because what traders had been doing is they were scaling into bad trades on a hope and a prayer that they would turn around. And so often they would, but it only took one bad trade to basically wipe all of that away. And so I had to learn this lesson the hard way. Again, fortunately, I didn't blow my accounts because of the amount of buffer that I had. And the reality is I just ran out of trading day because I did this right up until the end of the day. And this put me into a really, really bad headspace. So much of the hard work that I had put into building all of this up, I felt had been wiped away. And of course, look, logically, I know I'm 100% responsible for my actions. This was all on me. Nothing happened to me. This was me happening to myself. So come Wednesday, I decided, of course, it's time to get back on the horse. I've done a lot of work to get to this point. I've really, really worked very hard on myself. And I went into the day with a mindset. Now, bear in mind that as I went into the day, I still had 2 accounts that were over payout threshold. I needed a few more days trading to get the payout on them. However, I still had 2 accounts over. One of them was, I don't know, $500 or $600 away, and then the other ones were, somewhere in the neighborhood of like $3,000 away because they had just crossed over that payout threshold. So I started the day with this mindset of, well, I'm just going to size up today until I recoup. Just again, the same thought process that had just destroyed accounts for me in the past. And I looked at my balances on these accounts. 2 are at payout threshold, one's right behind it, and I'm still above my initial price, which again, at this point, I had to be to still have these accounts open. But I was $2,000 in the money, towards that payout threshold. And I was disappointed at these balances. And I think back just what, 2 weeks prior, I was in a very similar place in terms of my account balances. I had two that were over payout threshold, one that was right on the heels of it, and several that were just trailing a little bit further behind. And I was ecstatic to be at this exact same balance that I now found myself being depressed at. If you don't think trading is a roller coaster, an emotional ride, you haven't experienced this yet, and you will, because this will happen to each and every single one of us. As much work as we put into developing the habits and developing the discipline, there's just going to be that one day. How do I know? I've interviewed over 300 traders, and I hear this same story over and over and over again. And I count myself lucky because it would not have been very difficult for me to really blow up and destroy those accounts. But I didn't. I'm not going to say I operated with extreme perfection on Thursday. I still kind of carried some of that. And with a little bit of luck and some skill that I have developed in the art of trading in terms of finding good entries, I wasn't positioned correctly. I traded longer than I should have, but I again was, I guess, a little bit rewarded for bad behavior. I had a pretty okay day. I was up, not tremendously, but I was up. And that really put me on the road to thinking about, what am I doing? It was after my trading day on Wednesday that I realized that I was at the same balance a couple weeks ago, and I was so ecstatic. And this depressed and defeated feeling that I felt for being at this exact same spot just didn't add up, not logically anyway. And that really helped pull me out of the funk. And it's Thursday now that as I'm recording this, and I had a solid day today. I when I say I had a solid day, I was up, I don't know, about 270, $280 per account, which is in and of itself a solid day. Between yesterday and today, those two accounts that were over threshold, I get to request a payout as soon as the market closes this afternoon. No trading tomorrow because of Good Friday. Um, and I picked back up, I don't know, about a third of what I lost on Wednesday on well, all the accounts, but the remaining accounts are now a couple $1,000s away instead of $3,000 away. And so I'm starting to see that progress again. And it really took that introspection into why was I looking at these exact same numbers so differently? And I mean, the answer is obvious, but that doesn't mean that taking that moment to address that and to consider that and to really put words to that, it just had such an impact. It really helped me sort of get a little bit more clear to where today, while it wasn't an especially profitable day in terms of comparison to some of the losses that I have taken recently, it was a pretty clean day. I stopped when I should have stopped. My position sizing was right on par. I didn't take any entries that I shouldn't have. It was very clean trading. I mean, the day continued. It would have been very easy for me to go back into that mindset and potentially damage myself. And I could have potentially won. I say won. I could have profited more on the day if conditions had proven themselves favorable. However, that's not the point. The point is I knew I should have stopped. And when I didn't, while I had had multiple occasions where that worked out to my benefit, it really only took one day of just really, really brutal execution to remind myself of how it doesn't matter how good I have gotten. And again, I'm not great. I still struggle with a lot of these questions as to when to enter and how to trail. And, I mean, things that I've gotten a lot better at, but things that continue to get a lot better and continue to improve upon, which I talked about on last week's episode. So as I go through this process, I had a call. It was a group call with one of my mentors, and he was talking about core values and what drives core values. Well, what drives core values is, what is your objective? Your objective will drive the core values that will drive the actions that are designed to move you closer and closer towards that objective. And so I had to question my objective. why would I operate and behave this way if my core objective, if my prime objective was to be a better trader, to be a more successful, more disciplined, more all the qualities that I want. If that was truly my objective, then my behaviors would follow through. But they didn't. So I really had to question this. So what was truly my objective? Well, it's helped me get to where I am, but I did realize that my objective was to prove to 24-year-old me that I could do this. And the way that I was able to prove this to 24-year-old me was through payouts, was through profitability, was through that dollar sign at the end of the day. So when that dollar sign didn't reflect my objective, my behaviors faltered. Now, they were consistent with my objective. They just weren't consistent with what I ultimately felt like I wanted. So I had to reshape that objective. And so now I've just fought through these mindsets, and I'm realizing that in order for my actions to change, my objective has to change. My objective has to be around the quality of my actions as a trader, not about the dollar sign at the end of the day. Now, all of this may sound super logical and really they're not things that I haven't talked about in this podcast in the past. But one of the things that I will never stop doing is self-reflection, because this is what's gotten me as far as I've managed to get so far. This is what's gotten me that first payout, which if you've been following along, you know how absolutely meaningful that was to me. But it doesn't mean that there aren't faulty areas within the system. And this happened to be one of them. So as I focused in this morning, as I continue to start, rebuilding even further next week, then I have to be very acutely aware of what my true objective is. And my true objective does allow for a red day that doesn't put me on tilt. So that's going to be the mission over the course of this next coming week, is shape my actions and shape my core values on the objective of being a better trader, not being a more profitable trader. Because at the end of the day, I know that if I'm a better trader, the profits will come. And don't get me wrong, I want the profits. In fact, I'm very happy to say that the third account did make it back over threshold today. And so I get to request a payout on 3 more accounts after, I think I just said this at the beginning, but I get to request a payout on three of the 9 accounts as soon as market closes and everything resets. So I get to talk about this today on my episode. I promised you guys my interview with my buddy Steve a few weeks ago, which I had already had recorded. The problem was that we had some technical difficulties on my end where the audio was absolute garbage, and I was just not going to subject that to you. So he was gracious enough to spend another hour with me and redo the interview. I don't even know if we touched on any of the same topics that we touched on the first one. However, I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. I think that there's a lot of meaningful moments and just a lot of fun and entertainment, hopefully, for you guys as we get into today's episode of the Forge Trader Podcast with my buddy Steve. Welcome back to the Forge Trader Podcast, where successful traders aren't born, they are forged. I'm your host, Gates Adams, and I am back again with my buddy Steve. I teased this interview right as I started back with some new episodes because I'd already had it recorded, but unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties on my end, the audio was absolute garbage and it was completely unusable. Fortunately, Steve has been kind enough to join us back for another round. So I don't know that we'll get the same things, same message out, but it should be a good message nonetheless. Steve, how's it going, brother?
Yeah, it's going well. Thanks for having me. Truly privileged to be on this.
Dude, I love having you on here, man. I know the last interview we did, it was 45 minutes of gold. And like I said, it's not usable. And I don't know if we'll come up with the same topics. I doubt we will, because I don't use a list of questions as I go through these. I think that's probably obvious to some people. But ultimately, what I know is that there are certain people that when I talk to, I always get some great nuggets that are not just hopefully helpful to me, because I know the last conversation we had was incredibly helpful to me.
Mm.
But my hope is that for the people that are listening to this podcast, there's some great gems and nuggets in there for them as well. So let's just take it a step back, man, because we don't have the context because of the loss of the other interview. So what's your origin story, man? How did you get into trading in the first place?
Yeah. So I think I share a very similar origin story to a lot of traders, right? Like just kind of finding your place in the world. There were things in my life that had happened, whether or not, they were in my control, they happened nonetheless, where I really started to look to what like my general purpose in life really was. I started out in the insurance industry at the age of 18, so I got my licenses. I was accredited, and I achieved some major financial milestones. I was able to climb the ranks in various insurance agencies. I was able to make a pretty sizable book of business for myself, but that still just like didn't you know, make me want to get out of bed every single morning, just going to work, just to collect a paycheck, earn a living. Um, and I came to a point of a crossroads in my career where I was like, you know what? All these successful people that I've talked to and that I've come in contact with, their number one asset is time. And when I started to look at how, comprehensive their life was and how they were impacting other people's lives, I was like, okay, well, the one common denominator that all these people have is this time and being able to um, scale themselves much beyond just having, a normal 9 to 5 job.
Right.
So I came to a point in 2016 where I was freshly married at the age of 23. I think I was only 23 for a couple of days, and decided that I was going to get married to the love of my life. And coming into a career that was pretty new to me, I um, had very little money. So I think that's one of the first things that most traders want is better quality of life, a more robust income, so to speak. But then the next thing was is that I felt like I had a greater purpose, a greater responsibility for my family, for the impact, the legacy that I could possibly leave. I've always had this like burning desire to achieve more than just like what is seen on the surface level. And I started looking at trading as a side hustle, as kind of, like, can I supplement my income? But then also, can this ever be a replacement of my current income? So that started in 2016, started with penny stocks, did a little bit of options, obviously crypto, as it was just starting out, kind of like the first major crypto bull run in 2016 to 2018. And then I just went fully into the futures market, and uh, it was because of the lockdowns really that I was able to go 100% in. And if it wasn't for a company like Apex out there, like a prop firm,
Mhm.
I don't think I would have ever been able to excel as quickly and really hone in on my skills without the backing of a prop firm like Apex Trader Funding. Um, I've learned a lot of things along the way. I always say this to anybody that I talk to, that you will not find another job, another industry in this entire world, in any economic centers, in any countries, in any industry, where you will learn more about yourself as a result of doing the job. Sure, like there's other vocations out there, being a doctor, people that really are making a difference out there, where you get to learn about yourself. But like, talk about seeing the man in the mirror every single day when you come in front of the charts, how you react during your wins, how you react during your losses. Um, who are you? Like, am I just a consequence of a winning day? Does my mood change? Does my personality, me, Steve, does Steve change after a winning day? And does Steve change after a losing day? So just focusing myself, grounding myself to like who I am as a person outside of the consequence of me having a successful day or an unsuccessful day, depending on how you want to define what success is, that really became important to me. So my journey has definitely been, probably similar to a lot of other traders' journeys, but I've definitely learned things that have shaped me to who I am today.
Absolutely. Now I'm gonna take a quick stab at this. We were talking before we went live and we were having the conversation that I am a shameless self promoter, and I am, and I'm going to take this opportunity after you gave such a great glowing endorsement of Apex Trader Funding to just remind everybody out there, if you need funding for your futures day trading, go to apextraderfunding.com and use coupon code FORGED to get the best price available. I could not resist throwing that in there. Of course, if you're watching this, you can see the banner at the bottom. But for those of you listening, just a little gentle reminder there. I throw that out there because I'm a huge, huge believer. I know for me, there would be absolutely 0% chance I'd still be trading if I didn't have the option to be funded. And it's certainly been paying off. But all that aside, that's the last shameless self plug I think that I'll do, at least in the meat of this interview. Okay, okay, 2016, right? We're talking now 9 years. Now, at what point did you start to see actual money in the bank come out of your trading process? And was it really crypto bull run, or did you actually have some skill at that
I think it was 80-20. I'd say it was the crypto bull run, right? Everybody loves a bull market.
point?
Everybody and their mother's making a ton of money when it's a bull run, because all you got to do is just buy at the beginning of the day and then close your position out at the end of the day. It's not that hard.
Sure.
So I would say, it was more so just like the market conditions being
Mhm.
super favorable. I started to see a lot of early success, I think in about 2018, 2019, where it just kind of like turned over. I felt like a new tidal wave just came in, and I was able to be profitable more than, like, I don't know, closer to like 70% of my trades, 80% of my trades. And again, I think that's a credit to how bullish we were up until the end of 2018.
Mhm. So within relatively short order, you actually started seeing some profits, right? Now you say 80-20. I'm assuming 80% we being the bull market, 20% being some skill that you had developed at that point. Did it ever come crashing down on you once you started to have to basically develop the skill in and of itself?
Yeah, I would say closer to the end of 2018, probably November, December, I ended up losing all of my gains. So whatever I made up to that point, um, and I'm a very conservative individual just by nature. So I always, thought I got to risk what I'm only willing to lose. But at that time, like I was winning so much, I didn't even know what I was willing to risk at that point, right? So it came crashing down in 2018, and I took a little bit of a hiatus from like
Mhm.
2019, most of 2019, and then I think it was like September of 2019. I was like, I need to give this
Right.
another shot.
So you described yourself in your early career in insurance, and you're 18 and you're hitting some major milestones. To me, and I know you now, so for the record, this is not just based on these couple of sentences in the conversation. You're a go-getter. You're a hard worker. You're ambitious. You know what you want. You go after it, right? I know this about you, and this is absolutely mirrored in the fact that at the ripe old age of 18, where most of us were trying to figure out how we could sneak into a bar, you're out there making a real living as an adult human being, right? And so when I see this, this begs the question: can you ambition your way into success, or did you have to find other routes?
That's a phenomenal question. Um, I think it starts with ambition,
Mhm.
right? Like if you don't have passion, if you don't have an affinity for something just naturally or self-imposed, if you will, then that's the that's that's the quality that you need to get you through those hard times. So early on in my life, like I've shared this with Gates a number of times, but like my family was seeking religious asylum in the United States from the USSR, the former Soviet Union. And my father, just from an early age, instilled in me that it's really you. No one else is going to be picking up the shovel, digging ditches for you. If you want to have a bigger ditch, you got to dig it yourself. If you want to go and be successful, there's no reason for you to believe that somebody else is going to do it for you. I even heard this quote recently, that there's no man out there in this world that wants to see you succeed, like just competitively speaking, right? Whenever I'm a part of a trading Discord group or whenever I'm getting together with a trading cohort, what do they all do? They love to show their P&L. They show the $10,000 winning day, some guys 65,000, 100,000, six figures plus. And I feel like there's a little bit of an undertone to show that, I'm a little bit better than you. I had a higher P&L. And I came to a point where it's like, all right, it's no one's going to help me. So
Mhm.
I've got to pick myself up by the bootstraps. I've got to go in. I've got to start refining my strategy. I got to see what works for me, what works for my time frame, what works for my personality. Right. Like I said, I'm more of a conservative individual. And I think Gates knows this, but I'll let it be known to the public. I trade with like 1 to 3 micros at a time. And my trades might be, anywhere from like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So I'm there as soon as I put a position in. I'm really only trying to take like 1 or 2 trades a day. Today was a little bit of a different story, but I try to take 1 to 3 trades a day. That's all I really need. And going back to that quote that there's like no other man out there except for like, I don't know, maybe your own dad that wants to see you do better than he ever achieved in his life. But it's really like you against the world. But then in the world of trading, it's you against you. So it's one thing to be competitive against somebody else. Try being competitive against yourself. It's it's such an interesting phenomenon in trading.
In my opinion, it's the only competition that matters,
Yeah.
but most people don't really see it that way. And
Mm,
I think that's a phenomenal point because, look, if I'm just a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and I continue to do that over time, there's absolutely nothing that I can't accomplish. And um, okay, you talked about today being a little bit of a rough day, and I'm gonna share with you because on the intro to the last episode, I shared kind of a high point at my at my trading growth. I hadn't done all of the math because with a few payouts and everything like that, I was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $50,000 to $60,000 worth of profits in about 6 weeks. And yesterday, I knocked down about 30 of that.
mm,
Um, and it was an absolutely brutally painful day. Now, I didn't blow my accounts. I think the only reason I didn't blow my accounts is because I ran out of day. Um, I don't know, maybe something would have happened, but I was literally in trades right up until about 4:56 in the afternoon. So being having to be out at 4:59, I really I got into that mindset of I just wanted to recoup what I had lost, and so my position size kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and
mm,
just one hit after another. The market just could not decide where it ultimately wanted to go. So those beautiful targets that we sometimes just find that it just rushes off to in 30 seconds just was not happening yesterday.
mm.
And in the midst of all of that, maybe I got a little bit blurry as to what my real targets should have been because I wanted to find targets that would have recouped the losses, not the ones that made logical sense. Now, does
Mm.
this mean that I haven't come a long way? Absolutely not. I went back in today. I had a relatively decent day today. I can't say that I was 100% spot on in all of my decision making, and I was a little bit affected by yesterday and a little bit of luck came into play. But it was also um, a big growth moment for me in realizing that okay, I essentially lost $30,000 worth of gains yesterday, and that actually put 100% like all of my accounts at payout threshold. So essentially, anything above and beyond that would have
Mm.
been money in the bank. So coming back from that, look, as traders, we're going to experience this. There's not going to be a time where we're at least not tempted to, I'm just going to say it, go batshit crazy because we just had a rough start to the day and it just continued to get worse. And it's the snowball effect or the avalanche effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So while we all have rough days, what is it that you have done? And again, I'm going to value your opinion on this because I know the type of person that you are and what you've done in the past. What is it that you do while possibly imperfect to combat that just reaction to the rougher days?
Yeah. Um, it really it comes down to who does future Steve mentor younger Steve, like
Sure.
current today, present Steve. Um, and what words of advice? So like I almost like I try to think of myself as like obviously I want to carry the identity of being a successful trader because it ultimately starts with identity. If you truly don't even believe in yourself of being a successful trader, then you're just wasting time, you're wasting your effort, your money. So for me, the first thing I always do is I reiterate my identity that I am a successful futures day trader. And I remind myself of the qualities that a successful futures day trader has. Now, making profits is one thing, right? That's an easy way to assess if a trader is successful or not. But what do you do when the times get bad, right? Like, what does a successful trader do? If I want to maintain that identity of being a successful trader, then I need to be able to exhibit those qualities in those fail safes, right? Like, when do I push the button and say it stops now? So I've had to go and literally talk to myself in the third person and be like, hey, this is future Steve talking to current present day Steve. What are you doing? You know how this is going to end. And if you don't stop this right now, then you're just going to be right back to square one. You're then going to be battling with your identity of being a future or successful futures day trader. Do I want to battle with that? Am I a successful trader or not every single day? Definitely not, because then that sets me up for a tougher road or a tougher obstacle to overcome. So from like a practical standpoint, um, I literally like I have to shut it down.
Right.
If I do not shut down my rig for the day, I know that I'll be finding myself back in the chair trying to recoup the losses. And we touched on this just before we started the podcast, but human nature, right? There's really like two types of people that are out there in this world. There's the type of person that wants to avoid pain
Mhm.
at all costs, and there's the type of person that is trying to achieve pleasure in life. I think the majority of us are trying to avoid pain
Right.
because you could also argue that when you're avoiding pain, you have a consequence of feeling pleasure, right? Like you feel good about yourself. You're not in pain. You don't have any ailments. So
Mhm.
life is good. Everything is great. So when we're constantly trying to revenge trade or when we're trying to like recoup losses, that's us basically not accepting the pain
Right.
that has already occurred. And if we can't come to terms with that reality and we just keep pushing it off to the side, then we never actually deal with that pain. So I've had to convince myself, like literally practically convince myself, talk to myself in the third person and say, Steve, this is painful.
Right.
Let's end it now. So I took my max loss. Steve of maybe about a year ago, 2 years ago, would have kept trading today to recoup every single one of those losses. You know what else is interesting? I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Gates, but when I have a losing streak like I did today, I took I took 5 trades today. Every single one ended up being a loser. You know
Mhm.
what happened to me? I remembered every single loss I've ever incurred in my life.
So I've done a lot of studying on a little bit of some psychology and the subconscious mind, and I will tell you one thing that always stands out, that really stands out as you say that, is memories are solidified by emotion.
Mm,
So the more emotion that's attached to an incident, the more clearly you're going to remember it. So I think that that tells you that that pain is a bigger driver for you than the pleasure. Because on those
mm,
winning days, I don't remember every single trade.
mm,
But on those losing days, when it's one after another, I can remember like almost probably to the tick. I mean, I'm kind of reiterating what you're saying. And so when you think about that, I think there's some insight in that, because if you have that much clarity because they were losing trades and it was one after another, and again, yes, I have 100% experienced all of this. That emotion is so much stronger that that memory becomes more solidified.
mm,
And I don't know. Maybe there's an actionable step once you realize this, because you're the one who brought up the fact is, yeah, I mean, we either avoid pain or we seek pleasure, and I think we all sort of fall somewhere on the spectrum. It's not that if we're pain avoiders we don't seek pleasure,
mm,
or if we're pleasure seekers we don't want to avoid pain, but there's kind of that sliding scale of which one has more of an impact on our behaviors. And I would absolutely say that I'm a pain avoider. I don't like conflict. I avoid uncomfortable situations. And so many of these uncomfortable situations really exist because on the other side of them, there's pleasure. But I will avoid that pain more so than I will seek the pleasure. Does that come out in my training? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's like why I take every win
Mhm.
with I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Like every single time I get a win, I recognize that win. I remind myself that like, look, Steve, you stuck to the plan. You were rewarded for this, and this is just as good, if not better than, um honoring your stops. Like you have to be able to be okay with taking those small wins or taking those first targets and letting a winner run, whatever your strategy is. But just to reiterate to yourself that, like, hey, this is part of the process. Celebrate your wins,
Mhm.
right? And try not to avoid your pain as much as possible.
Well, and I think when we start thinking about this, what becomes actionable is trying to make intentional adjustments to our behaviors. And I know a mentor that I had a few years ago. His driving force, and I love this, and I've instituted this into my life, was not what do I have to do, but who do I have to become. And so I think this is very similar to your conversation from future Steve talking to today Steve. Is it's not what do I have to do to fix this, but who do I have to become? So you talked about the mirror. This is a concept that I've talked about on the podcast before, and it's a kind of a big driving force for me in the way that I operate. If you listen to the early days of the podcast, the way that I approach different areas of my life and how they specifically impact trading is really what this is all about. To me, I think trading is probably one of the most profound mirrors into our lives, just to reflect what you were saying earlier, because how I act in the charts is going to be a reflection of who and what I am outside of the charts, and vice versa. So when I made a commitment that I was going to be, in better shape, I'm not as young as I used to be. I can say as of today, I'm in the best shape of my life. I could also have said that yesterday. I could have also said that 6 months ago. I'm on a trajectory, and this is based in discipline. This is based in a decision that I made to not just hit the gym, but to hire a wellness doctor, to change the way that I eat, to actually have difficult conversations, which is not my forte, with my wife in terms of saying, okay, well, let's do some of this together because the buddy system is profound and powerful. Now, lucky me, she bought into it 100% wholeheartedly, and she's in amazing shape as well. And this has been a journey that we've taken together. But to me, the reason I started down this path was because I wanted to be a better trader. Now, the net effect is I'm probably healthier than I am a good trader, but
Mm.
that trajectory that I'm seeing in my physical life is it's pulling up the I guess my results in trading. So while I'm not necessarily where I want to be, I'm not as disciplined as I want to be, I'm not doing all of the things the way that I want to, that work that I'm doing in this particular area of my life is pulling up every other area of my life and creating a better balance, right? Whereas yesterday I had a really awful day. And when I went home, I was in a shitty mood. I fortunately had a neighbor coming over for dinner because he's leaving town. We're probably not going to see him again for a good while. So I had to put on the brave face. But before he got there, my wife knew that something was up. And I mean, I shared with her, the basics of what had happened, but it just I this took itself into that part of my life as well. So this mirror concept, it is a two-way mirror. I don't know if that's really the proper verbiage, but it goes both ways, and it's significant. And I mean, I've been a business owner. I've had relatively high level jobs. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my life, and never has that been more true than it is with trading. Have
Yeah.
you experienced this to that degree?
Yeah, I would say that and even more so. Like I also can't even think of another vocation in the entire world where you can actively lose money going to work,
Right.
right? Like, what other job is there out there where you are actively losing money? As soon as you put on a trade, you're not in profit,
Right.
right? You've opened yourself up to a risk,
Sure.
right? So you're not even profitable from the get-go of you even initiating your job for the day. And that's like it's a paradox, right? Like I'm going to work and I lost money at work today. That
Right.
never happens. And so this type of job, it really requires a certain foundational behaviors, foundational belief system that everything that I do leading up to the point of me actually clicking the mouse and
Mhm.
executing a trade is so much more important than most other vocations in this world. Like when I was in the insurance industry, I was an insurance broker, and particularly for like private equity companies. The goal of the private equity company is to buy low, right, to sell high, and they're doing everything that they can from like a small marginal standpoint. Increase headcount, increase production, increase our benefits, right? So that's what I was responsible for. Is like, how do you improve the overall mood of the employees that these private equity companies are coming in and trying to turn for a profit. Well, it came from benefits more so than most other things that they could have actionably done when they were turning these companies over into like a profitable environment. Whereas in like trading, the things that we do on a consistent basis, like as minuscule as they can appear, like working out, like you said, right? Like having that physical feeling where you feel in control of your body is going to translate to how you respond with your emotions. That's why I have like a daily pre-journal. So I have a pre-journal and a post-journal to my trading sessions. My pre-journal, I'm basically asking, all right, where am I mentally this morning? Am I mentally there? If I'm not, I probably shouldn't be trading. And I'll tell you a secret, I still trade even if I'm not all mentally there. Uh, Emotionally, right? Am I emotionally there? Am I there? Um, am I just getting on the charts because I see how volatile the market is and the opportunities that it's presenting? And I have this sense of FOMO that, like, if I don't trade today, then I'm going to be one step behind everybody else. And I'm going to be one step behind my future, aspirations and goals. I got to keep that in check. And then obviously, like physically, right? So, like, am I there physically? Do I feel good? Right? Like, am I prepared to sit because this job, this vocation requires a lot of sitting, a lot of strain on the neck. I don't know if you ever have that feeling, but
Oh
like
yeah.
punching
Because I'm
over,
sitting
staring
here
at the screen,
cracking my neck
right?
as we speak.
But like the physical aspect, it's like all of this comes together, right? And can we truthfully, honestly, genuinely tell or like scale ourselves and say like, hey, I'm prepared to step into the battlefield today against myself. Like I'm gonna have to fight against myself. Do I have the army of like my mental self, my emotional self, my physical self to fight against the things that could happen in the market and how it could potentially influence my execution and my thought process, my
Right.
psychology.
It, of course, all of that comes into play because this is so different from what most of us do. And you bring up the concept of it's unlike a job. I mean, this is like the one arena that you can go in and you can put yourself in a position to lose money. Now, I've been a business owner, I used to own a mattress shop, and there were days that I lost money because I spent money on advertising, rent, employees, or whatever the case may be. But it's not the same. It's not like this in the moment decision can make or break my day, right? I can
Mhm.
make more in one single trade than I would make in a month shop. I mean, it's like there's swings and there's of course they're both ways as we experienced yesterday. But I think what ends up happening is a lot of people will move into the world of trading and they want to sort of treat it like a job. When I say this with a grain of salt because on one hand, they want this to be the complete antithesis of a job, but on the other hand, they want the perks of the quote unquote job, but they don't want they don't want the downsides, right? What I mean by that is, they come in and they want to figure out how they can make a consistent X amount of money per month. I mean, how often do you hear somebody say, I want to make 10 grand a month trading? Like that's like I've probably heard that statement 1,000 times at this point. I want to make 10 grand a month trading, right? And they, I want to show up, do what it is that I'm supposed to do, and then be done. Now, instead of doing that for 8 hours, I want that to be 90 minutes, right? And instead of like being told by my boss that I need to study and put together this report and actually do the work and take the stats or whatever the case may be. I just want to do the trading part, right? I don't want to keep my stats. I don't want to do the journaling. I don't want to review all of my trades. I don't want to have that responsibility because that sounds like a job. But 10 grand a month also sounds like a job. So we get into this mindset of, I want this buffet style. I want all of the best perks of that lifestyle. But I want to do it in a fraction of the time, and I want to do it with like no stress and no extra work, right? So as you've built yourself as a trader, you do talk about your stats, you do talk about your journaling, you do talk about your reviews. Did you start there because you're the 18-year-old high-level producer, or did you have to get to that point?
Yeah, no, I had to get to that point. Like it brings me back to one of my earlier comments is like you have to be okay with taking that loss. So you can't avoid that pain forever.
Right.
At some point, like I'm not gonna take any credit for this quote, but like you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I obviously had a lot of lucky streaks. Being in a bull market, I got to see two huge bull markets in my trading career now, where literally you just open up a position at 8:30 Central Time and you close it at 3:59 Central Time, and you have made a tremendous amount of money. So it's almost like skill wasn't required.
Right.
Which I hate to say that, but it's true. Like I got
Well,
pretty
it's the
lucky.
reality, and it's what sort of often paints that picture for us that, hey, this could be the case,
Yeah.
especially through COVID, where people were just making money hand over fist because they had time, because they all got sent home, right? Trying to figure out something to do. They decided to start trading, and all of a sudden, I mean, I know people that were making, 15 bucks an hour that made hundreds of thousands of dollars and then turned around and lost it.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, like I came to a point, I think this was like fairly recent too, probably like 2022, 2023, where it finally clicked for me. And what clicked for me is like, I am not an algorithm. Okay. I'm a human being with emotions, and I'm going to take trades sometimes as a result of me feeling a certain way. Whether I like to admit that or not, like that's the truth. So I have to take that into consideration as that could possibly be a variable. Okay. So if that's a variable, then I have to be able to maintain my account balance long enough for those winning streaks.
Sure.
So it clicked for me when I finally realized that I'm not going to be making money every single day, right? Like how you mentioned with your mattress business, like you would have advertising costs, you would have some like inventory that you need to stock up on. So like you can almost chalk that up and say like, hey, I lost money today, but it was for the greater good. So in the same way with trading, like having those losses is just it's part of the game. We are never going to be perfect. As long as human beings are alive on this floating rock, there will always be a market, right? Because traders, they're competing with their own ideas against each other. They
Sure.
believe price should be trading at this level for this commodity. And a trader on the complete opposite end of the world is going to say, well, you're entirely wrong and it shouldn't be traded. So it's because of those differing competing ideas that we always have a market,
Mhm.
right? So that's a variable that I also have to take into consideration. The one constant is going to be me.
Mhm.
So when I do have a loss, when I didn't read the market, accurately enough where I could have profited, then I have to be able to be okay with saying, Steve, you were wrong. It's okay to be wrong because this is your advertising cost for the day. This is your inventory stock up for the day.
I've
But
I've
don't
had
lose
that
it all.
I've had that comment, and I may have even said it earlier in the podcast, but I try in my heart of hearts, I try. I swear I try to consider a loss as me buying inventory.
Yeah.
It's buying inventory for the wins, and I know that there's enough foundation in my past to where that will ring true, and maybe that's just something that I need to explore a little bit deeper in order to feel a little less like I need to make back every single losing trade immediately.
Mm,
But it's hard because when you're talking mattresses, it's tangible, right? So if I have a losing trade and I lose 150 bucks, that might be the cost of a unit of mattress. If it's 10 accounts, then call it 10 units in my warehouse, right? that logically makes sense. But when I see 10 units show up in my warehouse, I have to unload them in the heat of summer. There's a tangible aspect to that. When we're talking about trading and taking a losing trade and being comfortable enough with it to just chalk it up as buying inventory, that tangible isn't there, which means that I have to go a little bit deeper into conditioning myself to that idea. I don't know what it's going to take to get there, but what I've gotten pretty good at is identifying where the chinks in the armor are and
Mm.
trying to address those one at a time. And so this has been a big process for me. In fact, I even just got off of a call with another one of my mentors, and he's talking about core values, and really the core values are driven by whatever your desired outcome is, right? Whatever it is that your goals are, that's going to drive your core values, which are going to drive your actions, right?
Mm.
So I took this, especially after yesterday, I took this as an opportunity during this call, and I wrote down in my notes, I'm like, my desired outcome has been to prove to my 24-year-old self that I can do this. And the way that I do that is through dollars, right?
Mm.
My desired outcome hasn't been at the core level. On the superficial level, yes, I can say all the time, my desire is to be a better quality trader. But at the deep core of me, my desire is to prove my 24-year-old self that I can do this. And the only
Mm.
way that I can prove that is through dollars. And so I have to redefine my goal. I have to redefine my desired outcome so that my core values will represent the quality of the trade, not the outcome of the trade.
Mm.
Now, he made a comment that terrified me a little bit because I don't know what the answer is, but he says, uh, you can't change yourself. You can't really just change who you are via willpower. I mean, I guess on small things you certainly can, but you can only change yourself through process. Something that's as deep seated as this, I had to change through process. But the call ended and we didn't get into what that process looks like. I know that we'll get into that. I know that there's various different processes for different things, right? But this now is top of mind as I sit here and think about, okay, what is the process that I need to go through to redefine my outcome so that my actions are in alignment with what I really want, not what
Mm.
24-year-old insecure me wants because he feels guilt and shame and all of the things about losing mom's money, you know? So with that said, like I said, I've gotten pretty good at identifying the problems, which helps me seek the solutions, but it doesn't always give me the answers. And so that's where having somebody to talk to really makes a big difference. That's why, uh, honestly, I love the fact that I get to talk to you about all of my particularly rough and fruitful days, simply because it keeps me honest to myself. And if I'm honest to
Yeah.
myself, I'm honest to the process. Because I have to say, hey, today was a shitty day, and I've got to start a portion of this over again, right?
Mm.
Which, if I didn't have to have that conversation with anybody, then I could hide that from myself.
Yeah.
And that's probably the worst thing that you can do, is be untruthful with yourself as to the reality of where you are. That's why the identification process is so critically important to me. Because without that, then I don't know where I need to go next.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can comfortably say that in the course of the last 13 months, as I've really explored this process and worked toward this, I guess 14 months now, it has absolutely paid off. It's taken a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of investment into myself and into others, and working on it. But at the end of the day, this is a long game, right? You've been at this
Yeah.
for 9 years. Would you consider yourself a perfect trader at this point?
Not even remotely close. No.
It doesn't happen.
No.
That's not a realistic target.
Mm.
But being a little better than yesterday is.
And it's interesting that you say that, because something that I recently celebrated my 32nd birthday. So to clarify, 2016, I was 23 years old. So
Sure.
I wasn't 18 starting out at that time, but
Yeah.
I started out my professional career at 18. But nonetheless, Celebrated my 32nd birthday here not too long ago, and something that my family and I do pretty frequently, basically on every birthday, is we mention one rose that we had during the year and one uh, thorn.
Mhm.
Geez, one rose and one thorn. And so the rose is meant to symbolize like what's something that you learned, what's something that you feel like you've accomplished, that you've achieved. And obviously, the thorn being the opposite side of that coin is what's something that was like painful for you to learn, but nonetheless, like two learning opportunities. My rose for this year was I finally understood that there is no destination in life. When I was young, right, being a hopeful 23-year-old, just starting out in my life, I just got married. The horizon seemed so far away, but I thought if only I can get to that horizon, I will truly be happy and I'll feel like I achieved and I accomplished something, right? So it's no secret, you and I have a little bit of an age gap, right?
Right.
Probably a lot closer than what people think, but nonetheless, we still have an age gap. And I would look up to guys like you. I would look up to some of common mentors that we share. And I would say, like, man, these guys have got it all figured out. But as soon as I start having these conversations, it's like, man, they're the same exact 23, 24-year-old
Mhm.
that I'm feeling like I am today. And if they have yet to achieve like this destination, or even if they have achieved what I thought was the destination, they still have this like thirst that is unquenched. So my rose for this entire year is like there is no destination.
Mhm.
We're gonna keep trying to like we push the goalpost every single year, and we say, okay, this is what it's gonna be that's gonna make me ultimately happy and satisfied and accomplished in life. But it's never there.
Right.
So I've started to take every single day to be the destination. Like if I can be 1% better than what I was yesterday, to your point, and enjoying the process. The journey is really what matters. There is no destination. We will never achieve it because we're always going to grow. We're always going to be much more ambitious. Like even talking to my dad as he's approaching, his 60s, and I've seen him be an incredibly successful businessman. Lost everything, started another business, had hundreds of employees, closed it down, and he's gone through like these ebbs and flows in his life, and I'm like, he's so accomplished. But when I ask him, I'm like, do you feel like you've achieved anything in your life so far? And he's like, no, I feel like I'm still chasing that.
Sure.
So if my dad is still feeling that and everybody else that I talk to, maybe I got to take that more than just with a grain of salt. Like maybe that's a foundational truth that there really isn't an endpoint to this game. That's the beautiful thing about life is that we take every single day and we treat that more or less as the destination. Like, did I achieve? Can I lay my head down on my pillow at night and be happy with what I achieved today?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, I've achieved that 1% and not stress so much about that goalpost that I'm trying to get to and not trying to get to a destination and say, only then will I be happy. Kind of like how I brought up in the beginning of the call or the podcast is celebrate the wins. As much as we want to be, difficult on ourselves and all of that and say, oh, we got to be better, we got to do 1%, 1%, when you have a win, as small and as marginal as it could appear, still celebrate it. Because that's what's ultimately that I've noticed in my life has helped me reinforce my identity. My identity is that I want to be a successful trader, that I am a successful trader, and count those wins up, start stacking them. All of a sudden, I look back. Hopefully, I do this for another 9 years. And
Right.
then these past 9 years, I look back and I'm like, dang, I've accomplished so much. But when I'm like trying to tally it up, it doesn't feel like I did a whole lot, but I did something every day that brought me to like another 9 years of some formidable success.
And I think that's it's an incredible point. And look, I talk about my physical health not as a brag because trust me, I still got much further that I want to go. Right. But when I think about high school me, 20 something year old me, 30 something year old me, 40 something year old me, and me now, I know what it took to get to where I am. I'm very proud of the accomplishments that I've made, the strides that I've made. But I think one of the saddest things in life is when someone hasn't seen you in 10 years and they look at you, oh man, you haven't changed.
Ugh.
I mean, I just like I remember my first high school reunion, and so many of the guys are like, "Oh man, dude, you haven't changed." I mean, and I'm sitting there going, like, I had changed a lot, and now that came from a lot of hardship, that came from some good decisions, that came from some hard work. I mean, it came from a variety of different angles, but there was no way anybody was going to say that to me. Not because I
Mm.
was intentional about it, it just sort of happened. But I remember being in that moment, looking around, going, my God, you're almost 30 years old, and people are telling you haven't changed since you were 18. That to me, I mean, that's sad,
Yeah,
you know?
scary.
And so as I now am in my 50s, and I think about, approaching my 60s, approaching my 70s, I still would be horrified at the idea that me now doesn't change for another decade. While I'm
Mhm.
very pleased with the work that I've done and who I've become, I don't want to stop that progression, because I will say the last probably 5 years of my life where this has been a dedicated focus have been really the most satisfying of my life. And I've seen
Mhm.
more growth in that period of time than probably 30 years prior. And so when I do things like do a podcast and I wonder if anybody's ever going to listen to these things, or when I took an opportunity to interview traders when I couldn't really hold a trading conversation, much less interview people, like I was so gun shy and I felt so massive, massive imposter syndrome when that opportunity came to me. And then a few
Mhm.
months later, they said, "Hey, you want to do this live on YouTube?" And I'm like, "Okay." And I've stated this publicly. There is an episode of the Trader Bacon Show that I made them pull down because it was so incredibly embarrassing. Because I had a guest that his internet crapped out, so my producer came on, who was actually a trader, way more of a trader than I was, and so he starts asking me about some stuff in the charts, and I mean I froze, and I mean it was horrific.
Mm.
That was 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago.
Wow.
And I think about these conversations that I get to have with you, with some of the guys that have been on the podcast or on the Trader Bacon show, and the conversations that I'm having are very, very different. And that comes from the level of intent that I've put into the process. Now it happens to be on a topic that, admittedly, I loved 2 years ago. I just didn't know shit about. I've come to know a lot more and understand more and see myself grow and develop in that. So these conversations now become much more natural and much more fun, to the point where, like, my wife is the talker in our relationship. She probably uses 90% of the words in our relationship. Sorry, honey, I'm outing you on this one. But I end up on conversations like this, and I mean, I become this chatterbox. And there was a moment where she once asked me, she's like, "How is it that you can have these conversations with these traders? And we've been together for over a decade, and I'm like, it's just it's not apples to apples.
No.
It's There's really no one I would rather have a conversation with than my wife, but I don't get the outlet to talk about. Well, I do now, but like I didn't really I could talk to my wife every single day. I didn't have
Mm.
that opportunity when it came to trading, and nor did I have the confidence to have a lot of those conversations. So it feels really, really good to have these conversations. And to me, that's a sign of who must I become? Well, I had to become someone who could have a conversation, because honestly, the whole talking and interviewing did not come naturally to me.
Mm.
Trading clearly didn't come naturally to me. Deciding to have a podcast and have this extra commitment and trying to figure out how to have content every week did not come naturally to me. So who must I become?
Mm.
And a lot of that really comes back down to that mirror. And how do I see myself in this area of my life versus this area of my life, and how can that all come together? And it's been a meaningful journey. It's not one that's even remotely close to over. Um, and to me, this opportunity that I have to hang out with you, Steve, for an hour and just BS about trading or, tell war stories and maybe throw out a few little nuggets of advice that might be beneficial to somebody. This is what I live for now, professionally speaking.
Nice, yeah.
And
And it's meaningful. It's really meaningful work because I think with how secluded trading is, it's literally you and a screen and a mouse and a keyboard, right? You end up feeling lonely and you end up feeling like just a speck of sand or a grain of sand, I should say, on a massive beach, and you don't know if anybody could ever relate to you. The truth of the matter is that there are so many people out there that relate to exactly what you're going through. And even seasoned traders, I mean, I qualify as one, 9 years, maybe. Um, like I still struggle with these things on a consistent basis. And I struggle with like paralysis by analysis. And what I've noticed is that the longer I take in my inactivity, the more of a disservice I'm doing to myself. So,
right,
like doing a trade journal, reviewing my numbers, reviewing my trades, reviewing like my psychological um, ineffectiveness when I'm in a losing series, right? That inactivity is just gonna, it moves that goalpost, that proverbial goalpost that I'd mentioned,
right,
even further. And now all of a sudden you feel overwhelmed and you feel like, okay, well, now I'll definitely never reach that goalpost. Secret is that nobody ever does. Nobody ever reaches it. So stop looking at the map to try to find which road you should take and
right.
just put the car into drive and start driving.
Yeah.
The roads are all of a sudden going to start making sense. You're going to start taking a left at the right intersection. You're going to take a right at the correct intersection, so on and so forth. But it's that, like how you mentioned, like you didn't even, know how to hold a conversation about technical analysis. But the fact of the matter is that you started, right? And when you start to figure it out along the way. It's such a key component to the journey of a trader is just start. Just start. Don't be bogging yourself down with what you are, potentially going to succeed in or fail in. I heard this really good quote one time. It was like anxiety is the rehearsal of your failure. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I am literally role playing in my mind of how I will fail. That is all that anxiety is. So then I tell myself, I convince myself that, like, hey, Steve, you haven't failed at anything yet. You haven't even put the car into drive.
Right.
So what are you rehearsing here? You're rehearsing something that's just a figment of your imagination. So instead of me having this anxiety of like, should I start? Should I even begin trading? Should I even begin journaling and reviewing and looking at those losing streaks and reminding myself of all that pain that I endured? Like, yeah, just start. Just start. And then all of a sudden you're going to realize that this anxiety is just self-imposed on your, on your journey. Eliminate that, and all of a sudden the picture becomes that much clearer.
Wise words from a man of action. I think just such an incredibly valuable concept. I've always heard that regret is living in the past and anxiety is living in the future, neither of which matter in the moment.
You know,
And so I love that, and I definitely resonates because yeah, absolutely. If you are anxious about something, you are preparing your failure. And as I talked about before, a lot of work on the subconscious mind. That's what your subconscious mind sees as the future. Therefore, it will do everything in its power to fulfill that destiny, self-fulfilled
mm,
prophecy.
yeah,
And we do this to ourselves without even thinking. So if we just took a moment to reflect on what it is that we really wanted that outcome to look like, built a process around that, it's just not out of the realm to see any sort of change that you want to see.
yeah,
So for those of you that have not started, for those of you who have not started driving the car, as they say, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't made the decision to trade 27, I think it's 27 years ago. I would have lost out on one of the most horrific experiences of my life, but my life would not be what it is today. And to me, that would be a shame. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I had not made the decision 14 months ago to jump back in with a very different mindset and a very different approach, because that has been one of the most rewarding journeys I've taken. And it's only been 14 months. It's, in the grand scheme of things, not a long time. So wherever you are, it's time to get started. It's time to move in the direction that you want to go, but you have to define it. You have to figure out what's truly going to get you there, not what you hope will get you there. Get with somebody who knows more than you. Get with somebody who you can bat ideas with. Get with somebody that you can have conversations like this with. And if you don't know where to start, just go look me up on social media at The Forge Trader. I'm everywhere, except for TikTok. I'm trying to get that one changed over to the right name, but in the meantime, pretty much everything but TikTok. Steve, you are at Precision Trading Co. Where can people find you if they want to see what you're up to?
Mainly Instagram, but I also have some YouTube stuff out there. TikTok is also on the list, but I don't know. TikTok is TikTok, but
Yeah.
I'll be on TikTok fairly soon.
Sure. Well, keep up the great work, man. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking another hour out of your busy schedule to redo this interview. Again, I know there was gold in the last one, but there was some phenomenal stuff on this one, and I'm super proud to have been able to be a part of this. Thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for the rest of you, stick around. We've got a few more messages on the tail end of this, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of the Forge Trader Podcast. Hey, thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Forge Trader Podcast. It really means so much to me that you're here, and hopefully you're enjoying my journey as well as some of my buddies. And I look forward to bringing more of that to you. If you want more Forge Trader in your life, I encourage you to go to theforgedtrader.com/join. I will be doing announcements on any content that's coming out. I will be doing some special member-only live Q&A sessions, not just with me, but hopefully in the future with some of my guests as well. And this will be exclusive to anybody who is a member. This is completely free to join. Just pop in your name and email address. You know I won't abuse it. This is just my way of keeping in touch with you guys. As always, I encourage you to connect with me on social at The Forged Trader at pretty much all of them, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, all the goods. We'll be possibly putting up a TikTok, so keep an eye out for that as well. And of course, if you need funding for your futures day trading, make sure to go to apextraderfunding.com and use coupon code FORGED at checkout to get the best prices available at any given time. No matter what sale is going on, you'll get the best price available anywhere. Use coupon code FORGED, and you can get the link in the description. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next episode of